So you're well into your journey toward health now, and it started with a few small habit changes and has built over time to the healthy lifestyle you're no doubt enjoying now. But one thing we get asked about all the time when it comes to produce is, what's the deal with organic food? The key benchmarks defined for organic farming included: must be grown on land that has been free of prohibited pesticides and substances for at least 3 years before harvest. Consistent, careful management of soil fertility, correct dispersal of manure, use prevention as the first form of pest control, must have buffer zones that protect from the low flow of unwanted substances from nearby farms. And while these are pretty well accepted ideas for organic farming around the world, it's important to know that while in the US we have the USDA Organic Foods Production Act, not all countries have legislation over organic farming. Organic foods start to stand out when we look at artificial fertilizers and pesticides, irradiation, and genetically engineered ingredients. None of these are allowed to be in organic foods, but they can be in foods labeled as natural, as well as your conventional processed foods. So when you're looking at labels, these are the kinds of things you can know you're not getting when a food is labeled organic. Don't get sucked in by what is called the health halo that can surround terms like organic and natural. Look for your whole plant foods and your minimally processed foods first, and then look at what the options are you've got available within that groups of foods. So as always, try to eat the best quality food you have access to, and be confident in the fact that if you're eating a diet that's packed with whole plant foods, you're on the right path to optimal health.
There we are. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I am Dr. Sal. I am the Medical Director for Lifestyle Medicine Institute in the CHIP program, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's program, which undoubtedly will be as exciting as every other program is. It's interesting that Dr. Stoll mentioned labels, and on the last program we had Jennifer Drost on teaching us how to read labels. Today we will hear more about what's the deal with organic food. But I am extremely excited and honored to welcome you. That was the first time that I had ever met Scott, I think, when we were in Naples, Florida. He's also the co-founder of the International Journal for Disease Reversal and Prevention. Think about that name, Disease Reversal and Prevention, and that's one of the things that the CHIP program and the Pillars of Lifestyle Medicine actually does. He's also involved with the Rodale Institute, which integrates a regenerative vision for human health, agriculture, and the environment. And I know Scott's going to talk more about that. He's also a member of the Google Food Lab, and he served as a member of the Whole Food Scientific and Medical Advisory Board. He's the chairman of the board for the Plantrition Project, which I mentioned, and the chief medical director for the Ruby Cooking School, which is an online cooking program that if you don't know about, you really should learn about this. It's a phenomenal program. Ruby is spelled R-O-U-X-B-E. Every year, Dr. Stoll is involved in a health immersion down in Naples, Florida. This is a total health immersion that helps attendees recover their lost health, overcome addictions, and restore emotional balance. In addition, he has authored several books, but he's also been on a number of shows, including the Dr. Oz Show. He's been involved in the 2018 PBS special called Food is Medicine. He's been involved in numerous documentaries called Eating You Alive, Wait Till It's Free, and if you haven't watched The Game Changers, he's also been involved in that, as well as being a published author and member of the 1994 Olympic bobsled team. He has got so many accomplishments, it's amazing. He's a sought-after national speaker, living currently in Franklin, Tennessee. So without further ado, I would like to ask, and I'll bring you up. Nice to see you.
There we go.
How are you today?
Nice to see you too. Hey, terrific. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be with you and your audience and the CHIP program. I'm really delighted to be here. So thank you for your kind invitation.
Oh, absolutely. You know, before we get into the I won't say the meat of the program, the vegetables of the program. Tell the audience a little bit more about the Plantrition Project.
Yes, thank you so much. So in about 2013, I was visiting with my good friend and now co-founder of the Plantrition Project, Tom Dunham. And I had just proposed to Tom that we really should start a conference to begin educating healthcare providers, because I knew it was so difficult for me to learn the information and understand how to actually apply it in practice. So we started a conference in 2013, the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, there in Naples, Florida. That's where we met you.
All right.
And so we've had a friendship since that time. And it was successful. And so we wrapped that conference around a not-for-profit called the Plantrition Project. And the Plantrition Project's mission is to educate, equip, inspire, and empower healthcare providers around the world with the information they need to apply food as medicine and lifestyle medicine as a foundation of their practice. That's grown since, and we have conferences that we've worked to get started all over the world, from New York to Los Angeles to Australia. We have one starting in Bangkok, Thailand next year, Saudi Arabia. So they had a lot of openings and a lot of interested healthcare providers, which we're excited about. As you mentioned in your introduction, and thank you for that, we also have a free journal, open source, called the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. And I would invite any in the audience that are watching to sign up. It's free, and it's a way to keep up with the latest in the scientific research around whole food plant-based nutrition. It's ijdrp.org, and Dr. Kim Williams is our editor-in-chief. And we also have a wonderful resource that we are relaunching this year called plantbaseddocs.com, which is a global directory of healthcare providers that utilize whole food plant-based nutrition and lifestyle medicine as a key pillar in their management of patients, their partnership with patients. Right. And that's plantbaseddocs.com. So thank you, Sal.
Excellent, excellent. You know, and really just talking about food as medicine. So the whole discussion about organic foods and natural foods, what really is the deal with all of these terminologies, if you will? How do we educate ourselves to be better shoppers and connoisseurs?
Yes, yeah, and I think one of the important points that I really want to make at the outset of the program is that whether it's organic or conventional, right, the most important thing that anyone can do is to fill your plate with whole foods, whole plant foods, fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, mushrooms, legumes, herbs, and spices. The more the better. And the research even shows that even if it's conventional, 100% conventional, you will reap a profound health benefit by filling your plate with a whole food plant-based diet. And so I don't want anybody to walk away from the program thinking I have to eat organic, or I can't practice a whole food plant-based diet unless it's organic. I want to encourage everybody and the people that you're working with as a healthcare practitioner to just always make sure that the recommendation is a whole food plant-based diet.
So I know you're going to talk at some point about the cost. So even if cost really is an issue, which it really is not, and you're trying to transition from the standard American diet to something healthier, so the message really is that even if you cannot afford the typical organic foods, then eating conventionally grown fruits and vegetables would still be the proper alternative.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, when we look at costs, somebody transitioning from a traditional Western diet to a whole food plant-based diet, as you know, and I'm sure your listeners know that, you know, generally you can do that without increasing your food budget. Right. And so, you know, especially when somebody is willing to get rid of the animal products and the comfort foods and the junk food, right, there's a tremendous cost savings that can get rolled over into a healthy food budget. And so the net cost is about neutral for transitioning to a whole food plant-based diet. In general, meta-analyses looking at the research transitioning to organic diet, they've found that on average, it may be about 10 to 15% more if somebody went predominantly organic in their diet. So it's not a significant increase in budget transitioning over to an organic diet. You know, the gains may be more substantial. And one thing that's always interesting when we think about the amount of money that we spend on our food, I like to encourage people to rethink this concept of food in the budget. We often put food in our expenses category of our budget, and I like to encourage people to move that over to the investment category, because you're really making a long-term investment in your health and you're making an investment in cost savings in the long term for health care. You look at deductibles and co-pays and cost in long-term care. It really is an investment you're making in your future. And oftentimes that makes all of us feel much better when we realize that we're investing in our future when we're spending money every month and not just trying to cost save when we're looking at our food budget.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. I oftentimes talk to my audiences about the fact that many of us will use a wealth manager, somebody to help you with your retirement plan, if you will. But how many people actually hire a health manager? And when you really look at it, should you not be investing more in your health than in your wealth? Because really, if you save a lot of money and you get to your retirement years and you have no health, then it really doesn't matter. So I love that. So we're going to move everything, the food expense, to the investment category. That's a great way of looking at it. So what's the difference then between organic and natural? Because I look at so many food products and it says they're natural food products. So should I be choosing those? Are they really organic?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think let's just put some context on that because. I like to ask the question, does it matter the way that we grow our food? Because when we're talking about organic, we're really talking about a systematic approach to the way that we grow our food that likely increases the nutritional benefits of the food. And I think in our culture today, when we think about organic, it's easy to think that organic is just less pesticides and maybe more nutrients. But, hopefully through our conversation today, we'll understand that it goes far beyond just that nutritional evaluation of food. It's really more of a holistic kind of ecological vision for the way that we produce our food. And it does matter, as we'll see. Lord Northburn in 1940 was the first one to coin the term organic. And, before, 1850, the entire world was organic. So this is not like it's a brand new kind of innovation in farming. We're just refinding our way back to traditional ways of growing food.
Right.
But as we came through the Industrial Revolution and World War II, farming took a dramatic shift. And as well as the Green Revolution in kind of the 1950s and 60s, where we started to look at chemicals and chemical enhancements to improve the production of food. And during that shift, we stopped looking at the health of soil and kind of this ecological concept of growing food as an ecosystem. And we started to look at production per acre or yield per acre. Mm-hmm. And so we started to use chemical inputs like nitrogen. In fact, all of the nitrogen came from a repurposing of the nitrogen plants during World War II to produce nitrogen fertilizer, bombs to fertilizer. And then because the soil was not healthy, we began to grow plants that were less healthy and more susceptible to disease, began to be attacked by pests and more and die from different infections. So to combat that, we had to create pesticides and herbicides and begin spraying the plants so that they would grow and reach that point where we would have a healthy yield. And you know what? By using chemicals, yield improved dramatically. Sure. Cost of food reduced significantly. And everybody heralded this as the greatest revolution in food production that would allow us to feed the world without any problems. But we can't just do one thing. We can't imagine that by just changing the chemical inputs of plants that we're going to be able to, produce more food without a consequence. And it's taken a little bit of time to understand the consequences, but we see now that through the research, when we begin to put those chemical inputs onto the soil, we kill the life in the soil. And that life is critical. The soil fertility, this microbiome, or these billions of bacteria that live in the soil that produce life and health for the plant. In fact, they help the plant to gain these phytochemicals and antioxidants that you often talk about in your program. And without that soil life, the plant is unhealthy. And if the plant is not healthy, the people eating it are not going to be as healthy either. So in summary, organic is really a vision for a different ecosystem of growing food that takes into account life at every level along the pathway.
That's great. You mentioned, I think you used the word holistic. And when you look at holistic health, what we're really involved in with this ecosystem that you describe is really health for the people, the planet, and the animals. And when you look at how all of those things are interconnected, everything that we do when it comes to agribusiness really has a significant impact on the health of the people, the planet, and the animals. So we really have an opportunity to really make a difference in human health and planetary health, and obviously all of the stresses and such that the animals go through. So it's almost a higher purpose, if you will, to really get involved in this. Why would someone really even bother to choose organic? What's in addition to having less pesticides, does the science really show that there's a difference in nutritional value?
The research shows most people are choosing organic because of the health benefits. And one of the predominant health benefits is the avoidance of pesticides. So we'll start there, and then we'll expand it from there as to why someone might choose organic. But when we simply look at the pesticide content of conventional food, and we measure the number of pesticides in the human body when they take fat samples from an individual, we have about 29 different pesticides in our fat today. There's been some correlative research, so not causation, but correlation and association with pesticides and diseases like dementia. But I think the real key for pesticides and human disease is in children. Because children are much smaller, the concentrations of pesticides that are exposed to are much higher. And because their nervous system is developing so rapidly, the pesticides and toxins have a much more significant impact on that young growing body. There was a really interesting study that just came out in 2020. And one of the challenges that the organic industry has had is that there are not a lot of randomized crossover interventional trials looking at the health benefits of organic in a human body. And in 2020, there was an excellent study. It was a randomized crossover intervention trial looking at organic produce in children and measuring the oxidative stress and inflammatory markers in their little bodies. And they found a very powerful association, and almost like you can turn it on like a switch, turn it on and turn it off. As children were eating a conventional diet, their inflammatory and oxidative stress markers began to rise rapidly. When they were transitioned through the crossover trial to an organic diet, all those inflammatory biomarkers went down dramatically back to zero. There was also an interesting study by Frank Hugh that showed similar findings in children and looking at the urinary metabolites of these pesticides, and likewise found that when children were on a conventional diet, they had high urinary metabolites of pesticides, and as soon as they went on an organic diet, those metabolites went down. So it simply tells us that as children are eating conventional produce, they're exposing their body to a host of pesticides, which we really don't fully understand the long-term implications of the chronic oxidative stress and inflammatory levels that are bathing their nervous system. There have also been a number of studies looking at children transitioning from a conventional diet to an organic diet and their ADHD outcomes. And they found that as children transition from conventional to organic, the interfering symptoms of ADD decreased dramatically, and their concentration and ability to pay attention in school increased significantly during that period of time. So for children, organic does make a difference. And I believe that's one of the most important places where we can invest organic produce. In adults, it's more association, and more studies need to be done looking at the long-term effects of this. But it's as you know, it's hard to measure the causative effects of exposure of 29 pesticides over a lifetime. It's a contributor to inflammation and oxidative stress, but we don't know for sure the degree that it impacts someone. When we step to the second level and look at the nutritional benefits of organic produce, a large meta-analysis recently found, 2019, that on average, organic produce has about 50% more phytochemicals, flavonols, anthocyanins than conventional produce. And so, I always imagine if I'm eating 50% more of these really important phytochemicals and micronutrients, breakfast, lunch, and dinner over a decade,
Right.
it will have a profound effect, because we know those phytochemicals do so many things, as I know you've been so adept at communicating to your audience. So we are getting more of those important nutrients in organic, and over a lifetime, I believe that really does make a difference, but it still needs to be studied to a greater degree. Then we get out into the edges of organic produce, and as you just mentioned, part of this is like a stewardship responsibility that we have for
Right.
handing the earth off to the next generation in better condition than we got it.
Exactly.
And so, when we talk about organic, as I mentioned earlier, it's about soil fertility, the number of microbes in the soil that really not only enhance the health of the plant, but protect the soil and can help to prevent erosion of that soil. And we know we're losing topsoil at rapid rates today. In fact, there's a dump truck load of topsoil that passes through the Mississippi into the Gulf of Mexico every second, taking with it all of these pesticides and fertilizers. So conventional farming has chemical inputs, which eventually wash down into the Gulf of Mexico. And today we have a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico the size of New Jersey, where no life exists because of the toxins, the pesticides. Our oceans are contaminated from the wash out of these pesticides out into the oceans, and are damaging life from the coral reefs to the small fishes, and have a profound impact literally downstream. We also know that the way that we are managing the soil, organic farmers care about the ecosystem of the soil and the ecosystem that is around their soil. Amphibians, the smaller life that is integral in that kind of organic ecosystem, ecological vision of farming. And by minimizing the inputs, they're increasing the biodiversity in their fields and in the waterways. In fact, in Pennsylvania, they did a large study on the aquatic life in the rivers and found a dramatic reduction in the amphibians, the frogs and the lizards and the salamanders that were exposed to the pesticides, and a feminization of the males, which decreases the ability of these little creatures to reproduce. And so, it's organic farming is really it's about thinking holistically and thinking beyond ourselves to invest in a system that is multiplying life at every level.
It's amazing the association. You mentioned biodiversity of the soil, and then we also talk about biodiversity of our microbiome, that area in the gut with all of this bacteria that's supposed to keep us healthy. So you can see again that connection that we have with the earth. If the earth is healthy and we actually eat from the earth, we can get ourselves healthier. And you also mentioned before the impact on the young growing body. So when you look at the field of epigenetics, as you mentioned too, with the switches turning on and off, you really look at and understand the importance of of a woman feeding herself before she gets pregnant, and then feeding herself healthy food while she's pregnant. And the study is really showing that benefit, and the epigenetic switches that are turned on go 4 generations downstream. So I tell my patients, you can get yourself healthier, you can get your child healthier, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. I mean, it is really amazing to think how one simple behavior that we can do consistently can make so many positive generational changes. So thank you for bringing that up. And I know that I've talked about this previously, the Dutch winter hunger study, where they actually saw significant changes in how people were eating, really showed that when they took the traditional Western diet foods away from people, they actually got healthier because they went back to what they called the peasant diets. They were eating foods that came out of the ground again. So all of these associations are just really incredible. We talked a little bit before about the cost and the benefits. Anything more about the cost of food? Because that really is one of the pushbacks that I will get from my patients. They say, well, to eat organic, it's going to cost me more money. Is that really true?
Yes, and so it is correct that organic produce is more expensive. There are ways to reduce it and to gain access to higher quality food. One of them that I always like to encourage people to do is to just grow something organically that you will use in your house, whether it's some herbs, a little raised bed with some kale, but in growing something, you'll get higher quality produce that's higher in nutrients, but it's going to connect you in a more meaningful way to the source of your food. You'll begin to appreciate the natural seasons and even the rain when it comes, because it's watering your plants. So it connects us back to this whole growth cycle of life, and I think establishes different levels of gratitude in our heart around food. So you can always grow some of your own. Buying locally from local farms is a great way to save money. Here in Franklin, we just moved here in September. We have a beautiful farmers market that's year-round with local farmers that are caring for their soil and growing organic produce, and we can purchase the food at this local organic farmers market at a significantly reduced price because there's no middleman. So we're buying organic produce about the same price that we might buy it at the grocery store if it was conventional. But we also have this unique opportunity to meet the farmers and the family and know that we're supporting each other and supporting local agriculture. So that's a beautiful way to save money on organic. There are some organic foods you can save money on by buying them frozen, and frozen is absolutely okay. The research shows that in some cases, the nutrient density of frozen exceeds that of fresh because it's allowed to ripen, it's picked, and it's frozen. So that's another way to save money. And then you can also buy on sale, freeze it. If kale's on sale, you can always buy it, chop it up, put it in a freezer bag, and save it for a soup stew or a smoothie bowl in the future. So that's a great way to save money as well. So there's lots of ways where you can save money and make more organic affordable in your budget.
So you just gave everybody some tips and tricks on how to save money and eat healthier. We're about a half an hour in, so I want to see if there are some questions. And actually, I see Dr. Colson is on the line. Joby and I actually used to work together when we were both at Lee Health. He asks, which is healthier, organic rice from the U.S., which has higher arsenic levels, or non-organic, non-GMO rice from Thailand or other Eastern countries? That's a pretty specific question that I want to attempt to answer. That is a
specific question. And thank you for that question. It is really important. There's a lot of information right now coming out about the levels of arsenic in rice. And rice really absorbs the arsenic from the environment, which is produced by, all of the coal plants and the technology that is producing energy, and it's falling out in rain and ending up in our soils and in the rice. And so arsenic, is a class 1 carcinogen, and it has significant implications, especially on children. And so it's an important thing to consider, especially when we're looking at children. For the most part, almost all rice has a different level of arsenic. There are a few rices that I'm aware of, one from Canada that has little to no arsenic, but in general, most of the rice has arsenic. There are ways to mitigate that through soaking and rinsing, which can decrease the amount of arsenic in rice. I consider, rice as it's a small addendum to a meal, so it's part of the whole grain or part of the carbohydrate component of that meal. And so, what we've done in our household is actually we've switched away from rice to using other forms of like wild rice, which is actually a grass. We used farro just the other night in place of rice, which was a great substitute. So we're just looking for ways to just minimize that arsenic content. I know that there are some charts online where you can look at the different types of rice producers and the level of arsenic, and that's a way certainly to reduce that. To the specific nature of that question, I don't know about the level of arsenic in the rice from Thailand, and I would have to look that up. But I generally don't recommend white rice and would tend to prefer anything with more color because you're going to get more nutrients. The darker, the better.
Right.
And then certainly mitigating the amount of arsenic is important.
Right. Absolutely. I like the suggestion, be open to trying new foods, because there are so many things. Now, I've been on this journey for about probably 6 or 7 years, probably starting from around the time that we originally met. And I've eaten foods during that time period that I never ate before. So really just being open to trying new foods, you will see that there are so many things that you've been missing out on all these years and that you can certainly take advantage of. And changing the way that you look at food and the way that you feed your children. I had a number of patients this week that unfortunately had a lot of unhealthy foods in the house. And I said, well, who buys the food? And the individual with me said, well, I do. And I said, why? And she said, well, I have to have snacks available for the kids. So I said, well, you can have snacks available for the kids, but you don't have to buy them junk food. And what you're doing is you're teaching them how to grow up to be either healthy or unhealthy. So the impact that we can have, and all of the people that are on the line, the impact that we have on ourselves and our families and friends is really dramatic just through the education of what we put in our mouths every day. I didn't see any other questions, but Kathy Raynard, who's always on the line, and as you know, Kathy is one of our chip gurus and the lady that actually got me involved when I was at Lee Health. She wants me to let you know that you are one of her heroes, a real giant in the field, incredible, passionate, and a gentleman. And I can echo that sentiment. I'll just tell the audience from a personal perspective, when Scott and I met and we became, peers and then friends, Scott and his family actually baptized me about 2 years ago. So I've had a great relationship with Scott, and I fully agree with Kathy that this is a true gentleman that if you don't know Scott, you absolutely need to get to know him. I like, Scott, your suggestion also about growing something, which is really cool. I have a lanai that I'm going to try and grow something out on since you said that and you put that to the challenge. Any other take-home messages that you would like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I like to think of our plate as a great opportunity to change the world. Every day we put food on our plate that comes from somewhere, that's grown by someone, and the way that food is grown has an implication on the future generations.
Absolutely.
And, so often in our westernized mindset, all of us have been kind of trained by the Western society to think about food as, convenient, taste, habit, tradition. And we think sometimes, so simplistically about our food that we're just trying to either get calories, feed our bodies, eat because it's time to eat. But we don't think beyond necessarily the power of our plate to transform the world.
Right.
But I really believe that the plate has incredible opportunities to transform the world in maybe more ways than we realize. If we start simply using our dollars every month to buy food from, individuals and farms that are run by families that care about the land, that are trying to preserve health and increase biodiversity, and practice kindness in the process of growing food, and we're eating that same food, we're going to transform our health, the health of the families, and the health of the land in the process. And as you have always advocated so well and CHIP program through the years, when we are healthy, we're interconnected in an ecosystem to the people around us, our family, and, it impacts relationships, it impacts our energy, it impacts our ability to go out and share the gift that's been given to us in our life. And when we're healthy and we have that level of energy, we begin naturally transforming the people around us.
Right.
And encouraging them because of our health and vitality to do the same. And, what would happen if 2 billion people in the world started purchasing produce with purpose?
Right.
The world would transform so radically in so many ways, from government and healthcare to farming and agriculture. Those systems would have to change because people are voting with their dollars every single day.
Right.
So I see organic produce as one of those ways. for us to, be able to, invest in our own health and to invest in the health of the families growing the food. As a quick aside, just to mention, they've done research on farm families, and farm families that are growing conventionally, the women have higher rates of miscarriages, lower birth weight babies, more complications with their births. The children in those families have lower IQs, more difficulty in school, and the families have higher levels of leukemia and birth defects. So by simply, choosing organic, we're actually helping the families that even want to transition over to organic have healthier families long term. So it's a multiplied effect when we are making that decision. And so, I just want to encourage people to start thinking outside of the box with the food that they're putting on their plate, and know that you're making an impact not only in your life, but, in this whole supply chain ecosystem when we're buying that healthy food to put on our plate 3 times a day.
So the power of the plate, you mentioned a number of things that I think we really should reiterate. The power of the plate to transform the world, buying produce with purpose. I mean, these are really thought-provoking statements that really can help remind us that we can have a dramatic impact on so many things by just doing some simple things and changing what we eat on a regular basis. So before we end, I want to just reiterate, I know a lot of people on the line, obviously they're involved in LMI and the CHIP program, and a number of the people have been also involved in ACLM, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. But if you have not been involved already in the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, I would strongly recommend that you go online and you learn about it, because again, it is an annual conference and things that occur throughout the year that really teach us the value of what we've talked about for the last 35, 40 minutes. And then again, looking at the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, which, as Dr. Stoll mentioned, is a free journal where you can go and find so much information that you can use for yourself, your family, and your patients if you're seeing patients. And then really just getting more information about Regenerative Health Institute, the Rodale Institute, and Ruby Cooking School. So try to do that if you can. I will tell you, my work has been so much involved with writing and educating, and I think Daryl was kind enough to put on the screen the book that I just finished publishing, which is actually a compilation of 5 years of writing for the local newspaper, the News Press down here in Fort Myers, on a weekly basis. So my friend Melissa Furman helped me come up with this title and the cover of the book, Grow Up Without Growing Old. And when you think about it, everything that Dr. Stoll mentioned today really will help us to grow up and hopefully do that in a way so that we're not growing old. I mentioned to you before that Scott was an Olympian, and we should all strive to do things physically that younger people can do. So you may just be interested in looking at some of the things here. Remember again that the show is archived. You can go back and read this again. We'll be off for the next 2 weeks, and then we'll be on with Dr. Wayne Deisinger talking about lifestyle medicine as a new and improved way of delivering healthcare. And I will just close by saying again, Scott, you are a pleasure to always be with and interact with, and such a tremendous value as a champion for healthy living and lifestyle medicine and plant-based eating and such. So I want to wish you a wonderful holiday. God bless you and your family, and I'll leave you with the final word.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sal. It's been such a pleasure to be with you. I'm honored and appreciate the invitation. And I just want to thank Chip as well for all of the leadership and vision that they've carried through the years to help transform so many lives through the message of lifestyle medicine. Dr. Hans Deal and the amazing team at LMI that are doing such great work. And everybody that's watching, I just want to wish you and your families a blessed holiday season and a healthy and impactful 2021.